Hello, welcome back to part 4 of our series on training videos for how to use KYHMIS. Here we are back at Fred Flintstone again. Have all my options still set at the top. You'll see I actually uploaded a photo of Fred Flintstone to make it more appropriate. But in this video, we are going to cover actually entering our clients into our project. So in the last video, we covered setting up their ROIs and we set up a service transaction for them as well. This time we're going to complete their entry assessment into our project. So I'm going to click on the Entry Exit tab. This is where basically all 3 phases of a project entry are done. So by 3 phases I mean, so the first phase would be the entry, in which the information that you put in is going to serve as a snapshot of their situation at the time they entered your program. Then you're going to have interims. What interims are, they serve as updates, specifically to monthly income, non-cash benefits, health insurance, and some disability information. Okay, so this is everything that occurs with them while they're participating in your program. So that's phase 2. And then phase 3 will be your exit, which is when they finish everything out and they actually leave your program. Okay, so in this video we're going to focus on setting them up with an entry. So here I'm looking at Fred's record. Once again, most of the time you're going to be on the Head of Household's record. And then you have this reminder here that says household members must be established on Households tab before creating entry exits. This goes back to what I was saying before about this left to right workflow with the tabs, in which Wilma, for example, in this situation would have to be established in the household to be included on the same entry with Fred. So we've already done that. We've got them in a household together. So I'm going to click this Add Entry Exit button. Okay. Now you want to be a bit careful with that button. You only want to click that button anytime they actually come in to your program brand new. You don't want to click it any more than once if they're already in your program. So I want them to enter the program together. So once again, we have our checkboxes here, and I want to select both of them. Otherwise, if I added one for Fred and then switched over to Wilma and did one for her, we would indicate that they were entering our program, but that would indicate that they entered separately, which wouldn't be correct. So our provider pulls over from what we have set in our Enter Data option, as does our backdate from our backdate option. Now type here, this drop-down box just refers to what type of entry is it. Most of the time you're going to be selecting HUD. But sometimes you may be selecting VA for Veterans Affairs programs, runaway homeless youth, PATH, etc. Okay, the purpose of these training videos is to cover the general HUD workflow. And this same workflow pretty much applies to all of these others, except you'll have some different questions that you need to answer in those different entry types and so on. So I'm selecting HUD. Everything else looks good, so I will hit Save and Continue. This takes us to our entry assessment. So as opposed to the last screen where they were bunched together and any changes that we made on that screen would have applied to both of them, in this case we have them broken down on separate lines here where we could change their individual entry dates if we wanted to. Now this will come into play later once we cover adding in a new member to the household. So if I scroll down, you'll see this is our entry assessment. This is our questionnaire that basically matches up with our intake forms that we have out on our help desk. So you'll see here my household members on the left, Fred and Wilma. So what this should be telling you here is that we'll have to do one for Fred. We'll have to complete his entry assessment, save it at the bottom, and then come back up and do Wilma's separately. Okay? And this is just a questionnaire, once again, that matches up with our intake form. So back up to the top, we're just going to go through and answer these questions. So client location. We have 3 options: the Balance of State COC, the Louisville COC, and the Lexington COC. Basically, Balance of State covers every county except for Jefferson and Fayette County. So you want to choose the appropriate COC that your client is located in. I'm going to select Balance of State for this. Now, since we answered his demographics question on the Client Profile tab, those answers populate over to this entry assessment. Now that goes along with what I mentioned earlier about how you can fill out those client demographics on either that section in the Client Profile tab or here on the entry assessment. We answered his on the client profile tab, so we'll have to answer Wilma's here in the entry assessment. Now, zip code of last permanent address. I'm just putting in the zip code for Frankfort, Kentucky. Now, we do get asked the relationship to head of household again. So in this drop down, I'm going to select self, head of household, because Fred is the head of household. Residence prior to project entry. What type of residential situation were they in before they came to your agency? I'm just going to say emergency shelter. We don't have to answer this next question unless none of these applied to the situation, in which we would choose other. In which we would choose other and then proceed to answer this question. But I'm sticking with emergency shelter here. Length of stay in previous place. How long were they in this emergency shelter? I'll just say 1 day or less. The number of times the client has been homeless in the past 3 years. How many separate occasions of homelessness did they go through? Now here, if you select 4 or more, then you have to answer this next question, which starts out if 4 or more. If you answer anything else, like 2 for example, then you don't need to answer this. For the sake of completion, I will put in 4 or more. And in this next question, if 4 or more, the total number of months homeless in the past 3 years. Now, when it comes to calculating months, HUD has a specific way of doing things within this service point system, or service point has a certain way of doing it, I should say. Basically, anywhere from 1 to 30 days will count as 1 month. So if they were homeless for 2 days, you would put 1 month. If they were homeless for 36 days, you would put 2 months. Okay, 62 days would be 3 months, and so on. So I'm just going to say 3. Continuously homeless for at least 1 year. Were they homeless for, a continuous period of 365 days with no breaks in between? I'll say no. The total number of months continuously homeless immediately prior to project entry. So this is, their most recent status of homelessness. How many number of months did that last? So once again, and if you click any of these questions, you can get some additional information on some of them. So in this one, for example, it does say partial months, i.e. 1 day to 30 days equals 1 month. So if you ever forget that rule, you can click on this question. So I'll just say 3 here as well. Length of time homeless, status documented. This just means, do you have official, documentation or records of their stint of homelessness? Housing status. What category here do they fall under when it comes to homelessness? So I will say category 1, homeless. Domestic violence victim or survivor. Pretty straightforward. I'll say no for him. And I can skip the next question if I chose no here. If I chose yes, then you can see you have to answer this next question. And then we get into the new HUD verification steps. Now these came into play as of October 1st of 2014. HUD indicated that they need a way for you to actively show whether or not you're checking to see if the client has all types of HUD approved income and non-cash benefits, insurance, and disabilities. Prior to that, the way we used to do it was we would just add whatever source that they had, and we didn't have to account for anything else. But here's how we have to do it now. So you'll see all of these 4 situations broken down into their own sub-assessment box. So monthly income, non-cash benefits, health insurance, and disabilities here at the bottom. Each of them has a yes or no question before that. So income from any source, all this is really asking is, does the client have monthly income at the time that they came into the program? Remember, this is the entry assessment. This is their snapshot at the time of entry. So I'm going to say that no. I'm going to say he does not have any income. But how do we account for all of those sources of income, like I mentioned, that HUD requires now? We don't use this add button here. We don't use that. We go to HUD Verification, okay? You'll see these red exclamation warning symbols beside them. That means that they haven't been completed. Okay, we need to get that showing a green check mark. So to do that, we'll click on HUD Verification, and it brings up a checklist. Okay, so this is all of the sources that HUD has indicated that they want to keep track of. Okay, so we have to answer yes or no for all of these. You'll see that they're set as incomplete now. So if I said he did not have any income, then I'll need to mark all of these as no. Okay, instead of clicking these no options one by one, I can actually select no here at the top. You see value for all incomplete source of income records. So I can select no, and it will automatically set them all to no. Okay, so you'll see what happens when I click save. See, right now I can change them. I can actually change the different bubbles, but if I click save, then it locks them down. I can't change the bubble. Okay, but it puts a pencil, an edit pencil, to the left of each source. So if I need to make a change here, if I accidentally chose something incorrectly, like earned income, for example, if he actually had earned income, I could choose the pencil. And this question right here, do you receive any income? It's a drop down that says yes or no, or data not collected. This represents the status of that bubble. Okay, so it being no right now, the earned income bubble right here is going to be set to no. But if I were to change this to yes and save, you'll see the bubble changes to yes. That's the only way that you can change these bubbles. Now, a word of warning, it can really mess up your data entry if you start tinkering with this option too much. Okay, you only want to change this if you're correcting a mistake. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as no. Okay, so once all of these are saved and locked in, I can hit exit. You'll see I have my green check mark here, and it puts a start date on these. Now, I don't want you to get confused what this start date is indicating, because remember we said no to all of these things, so why do they have a start date? What you're doing is you're establishing a time period of whatever status they have for that income. So this is a period of the client not having workers' compensation, or this is his time period, starting on December 1st, 2012, in which he's not receiving VA service-connected disability compensation, etc. Okay, so that will be really important to keep in mind once we start talking about doing updates via interim assessments. Okay, now you'll see it says showing 1 through 5 of 15. So that means that there are 15 sources of income here. Okay, this will also play an important role once we start talking about interims. There are a few different ways that you can look at all of these sources. You can use this box here and use the next and previous buttons to look at all the different sources. I don't really recommend this just because it doesn't give that much information and you can't sort. You can also bring HUD verification up and just look for a quick glance at what is selected as yes and what is selected as no, but it doesn't show you amounts. So basically the fullest way to look at these is to click this magnifying glass beside monthly income. This shows you each source, it shows you their effective dates, their time spans, and it also shows you the monthly amount here. You'll see that all of these are blank because we said he doesn't have any income. Another benefit of using the magnifying glass is that you can sort. Okay, so I can sort by source of income or monthly amount just by clicking on them. Okay, you can also print this list out. Now let's move on to non-cash benefits. So again, we have a yes or no question, non-cash benefit from any source. This is just asking, does the client have any non-cash benefits at the time he's entering the program? So let's say yes for this. I'm going to say he receives food stamps. So I will once again open up my HUD verification window, and it shows a list of HUD approved non-cash benefit sources. The easiest way to do this, so he only has SNAP, so I don't want to have to go through and select no for all of these. I always select no for everything up here, so it populates everything as no, because remember we have to account for all of these. But I'll set yes for food stamps. Now you will notice we don't have to specify how much in food stamps they get every month. You used to have to report that, but nowadays HUD doesn't require that. So I have my yes selected for SNAP, no for everything else, so I can save and exit. You'll see it populates my box here. I have the green check mark, and we can move on. Covered by health insurance. I'll say yes. Why not? I'll open up my HUD verification window, and once again we have the same thing. I'll select no at the top to blanket all of these options with the no option here, and I will just say that they receive Medicaid. So I'll save and exit. And then, does the client have a disabling condition? I will say yes in this case. Bring up HUD verification, and once again, same checklist. I'll select no for everything to get everything covered, and then maybe he has a chronic health condition. So once I select yes, you'll see a box come up that asks for more details about this. So if yes, so these if yeses are referring to the disability determination, which automatically changes to yes once you select yes in those bullets. So is it expected to be of long, continued, and indefinite duration and substantially impairs the ability to live independently? We'll say yes. Documentation of the disability and severity on file. I'll say yes. So this refers to official documentation of a diagnosis from a doctor. If they're self-reporting a disability, then you can say that yes, they have a disability, but that they don't have official documentation of it. They're just telling you that they have a disability. These next two questions, you see path only. Okay, so these questions are only answered if you're a path provider. So in this case, we're doing HUD, so I'm going to skip these two questions. Are they currently receiving services or treatment? I'll say yes. We're not going to put an end date here because this has an indefinite duration, okay? And is the above condition going to be long-term? So I'll say yes. So I'll hit save, and it locks this one down because we saved that as an option, but we haven't saved these others yet. So I will hit save and exit to lock those in and save it. So you'll see that for the disabilities, insurance, and non-cash benefits, they all have 8 sources. Okay? So we're done with Fred's entry assessment, so we can hit save. So this saves everything that we've done. You'll see these red boxes pop up here. Okay, all this is it gives you an at-a-glance look at how old the answer to that question is. So remember, it's March 6th, 2015, but we have it backdated as if we're answering these questions on 12/1/2012. So it's color-coded so that the further back in the past it is from present day, the more red the box will appear. The closer it is to present day, the more green it will appear. So these were 2 years and 3 months old, so they appear red. Okay, but if I weren't using backdate, if the change occurred today, March 6th, and put these answers in without needing to use the backdate option, those would all be bright green. And I can actually click on any of these boxes and see a history of how this question was answered. So you see it was answered by me on 12/1/2012 under this provider, and it tells you what the value was set to. So we've answered this for Fred. We've saved his changes indicated by this green check mark here. This does not mean that everything was done correctly or whatnot. All it refers to is that those changes that you made have been saved properly. So I'll change to Wilma. You'll see everything will be blank for her. So I'll go through and answer these questions as well. And I have to answer the client demographics questions because those weren't answered on the client profile tab, which is not a problem. Like I said, you can answer them in either location. Head of household, spouse, or partner. Wilma is white, non-Hispanic, female. I'm saying the same answers for the husband in this case. Obviously, you'll get this information from the clients once they meet with you. I don't remember what I said. I'm going to say 2. Might have been 3. I'm going through this pretty quickly, but you'll have their information on your intake forms, and you'll be able to answer them from there. So income from any source for her, I'm saying no as well. Bringing up HUD verification to classify everything as no. If those answers differ, by the way, so if I mark no for all of these, but in this yes or no question above it, if I say yes, my report will generate an error because I'm saying that she has income, but I'm not specifying any. Okay, make sure you pay attention to that. Non-cash benefits, I'm going to say yes for her as well because they do receive SNAP benefits. Marking everything as no at first, and then marking my yes for food stamps. For covered by health insurance, I will say yes for her as well. Bring up HUD verification, mark everything as no so I don't have to do it individually, and select Medicaid. Save and exit to lock those in. And then, does the client have a disabling condition? For her, I will say no. HUD verification, mark everything as no. Nothing else left to do here, so I will save and exit. Now you do have to make sure that you hit save or save and exit at the bottom once you're done. So I'll hit save. I'm going back up here just to make sure. We have all those red history boxes, and then both have a green check mark to indicate that all of the questions were answered properly. So this is it for the entry assessment. I can save and exit here, and you'll see that the entry does appear here on their entry exit form. So I have my entry date here for 12/1/2012. My client count is showing 2. That just refers to how many clients are associated with this project entry. I can use this binder clip here to do any attachments. I can attach their intake form here, for example, to keep it all in one place. I can delete this if I made a mistake, but we really urge users to not, delete things that they enter frequently. It's best to contact your system administrator to look into that for you. But this covers entering a client into your program. Later on, we'll look at how you go through and do interims. That'll be the next video. And then after that, we'll talk about how to add a new client into the system, both into your household as well as the project. And we'll move on from there. So thank you for viewing this video. We hope you found it informative, and have a great day.